My brother raised his glass with a grin and declared, "To the best son in the family, me." Laughter filled the room, but Dad quickly added, "And to Michael, our greatest burden." I smiled, stood up, and walked out. My mom sent a message, "You'll regret this." I simply replied, "Okay." Then I stopped paying their bills. And not long after, they broke into my apartment. My father always said, "Family comes first. Blood is thicker than water. No matter what, we should always support one another." For years, I took those words to heart. I'm Michael Carter. I built a successful plumbing business with my own hands. My crew respects me. My clients trust me. And in this city, my name stands for quality. I'm not rich, but I live comfortably, and I made sure my parents never struggled. I covered everything, their mortgage, bills, vacations, even the groceries. Meanwhile, my younger brother, Alex, lived at home. At 31, he'd never worked a real job, but according to my parents, he was the golden child. At every family dinner, Alex would sit next to me, patting my shoulder and saying things like, "Mike works so hard. Mom, I admire him. I wish I had his discipline, but I just haven't found the right opportunity yet." We should all be grateful for everything Mike does for us. To their faces, he was my biggest fan. Behind my back, though, he was my enemy. I found out by accident. One evening, about 2 years ago, I stopped by my parents' house to drop off some groceries. As I stepped inside, I heard Alex's voice from the living room. "Mom, Dad, you know Mike only does all this to make himself look good, right?" His tone was smooth, confident, like he was stating an undeniable fact. "He throws money around to get you to love him more than me, but deep down, he resents you for it." I froze. "He told me last week he's tired of paying your bills, that it's a burden, that he hates how much you depend on him." Alex sighed theatrically. I defended him. "Of course," I said. "Mike would never say that. He loves us, but maybe I was wrong. Maybe he really does see you as a weight around his neck." My hands balled into fists. Lies, all lies. I had never said any of those things, but Alex, the lazy, manipulative person he was, had perfected the art of playing the victim. My mother gasped. "I knew it. He's always in a rush after dinner. He never wants to spend time with us." "Exactly," Alex said, "and when he does show up, he acts like a hero for paying the bills, like we should be thankful." My father muttered something under his breath that I couldn't catch. I stepped forward, ready to confront them, to expose Alex for what he truly was. But then I stopped. I realized something. If I walked in now, they wouldn't believe me. Alex had been slowly poisoning their minds against me for years, always playing the humble son, always ensuring they saw him as the good one and me as the selfish one. I took a step back, then another. And I left. I never told Alex I overheard that conversation. I wanted to watch him continue, see how far he would go. Over the next 2 years, it played out just like I imagined. Every time I paid for something, Mike just wants control. Every time I didn't visit, Mike doesn't really care about us. Every time I gave them money, Mike thinks he can buy your love. And my parents? They swallowed it whole. Then came the night they showed me just how little I meant to them. The celebration that wasn't mine. The dining room was full of relatives, laughter echoing, glasses clinking, and the rich aroma of roasted lamb filling the air. It was my mom's birthday, and as usual, I'd paid for everything, the catering, the decorations, even the dress she wore. I stood at the edge of the room, sipping my beer, tired from a long day of work but content to see her happy. Then came the toast. "To our wonderful son, Alex," my father announced, raising his glass, "for being the pride of this family, for always being there when we need him." Applause. My beer glass froze at my lips. "Alex." I glanced at my brother, lounging in his chair with that cocky grin plastered on his face. He caught my eye and winked. And that was when I knew. He had one. He'd spent years twisting the truth, manipulating them, rewriting our family history to cast himself as the hero and me as the villain. And now, in their eyes, I was nothing. "And to you, Michael," my mom added suddenly, her sweet smile directed at me, "for, well, being here." Laughter rippled through the room. I thought I had misheard her. Here's to Michael. Alex smirked, lifting his glass. Our little burden. Laughter erupted around the table. A burden, that's what I was to them. Not the son who had kept them afloat all these years. Not the man who had sacrificed his own comfort so they could live well. Just a burden. I set my glass down carefully. My hands were shaking, but for the first time in my life, I didn't swallow it down. I didn't make excuses for them. I didn't pretend it didn't hurt. Instead, I stood up, pulled my coat from the back of my chair, and walked out. I didn't say a word. Behind me, the laughter continued. The music played on. No one followed me. By the time I reached my truck, the cold air biting my face, one thing was clear, I was done. That night, I made 2 phone calls. The first was to my landlord. I'm moving out, I said. I'll be gone by the weekend. The second was to my bank. I need to change all my account details, every single one. Because as of that moment, my parents weren't my responsibility anymore. The first few days after moving out felt surreal. I had spent years surrounded by noise, my mother calling to ask for just a little more money, my father sighing about overdue bills, my brother lounging around like a king while I worked 12-hour days. But now, silence. Too much silence. I sat on my couch, staring at the unopened boxes. This was supposed to feel good. This was supposed to be freedom. Then why did I feel so uneasy? For the first time in my life, no one was asking me for anything. No one was guilt-tripping me into paying their way. Yet, deep down, a voice whispered, "How long before they come looking for you?" I didn't have to wait long. The next morning, my phone exploded with missed calls and messages. "Mom, where are you? Why are you ignoring us? Dad, this is ridiculous. Pick up the phone. Alex, dude, what is wrong with you?" I ignored them all. Then, in the afternoon, a different kind of message arrived. Bank notification, unusual login attempt detected. I frowned. A moment later, another message popped up. Your password has been changed successfully. What? A cold chill ran down my spine. I immediately called the bank, my heart pounding. Sir, did you authorize a login from a new device today? The bank rep asked. No. And you didn't request a password reset? Absolutely not. A long pause. Sir, someone attempted to access your account from an unfamiliar location. We've locked your online banking for now. You'll need to visit a branch to reset everything. I exhaled slowly. I didn't even need to ask. I already knew who it was. Alex. It wasn't enough that I had been paying for everything their whole lives. Now that I had cut them off, he was trying to take what wasn't his. But what truly shocked me wasn't that he did it, it was that he actually thought he'd get away with it. That evening, I drove to my parents' house, my emotions a storm inside me, anger, disbelief, and something I didn't want to admit, hurt. Because, deep down, I still hoped that maybe, just maybe, my parents would finally see Alex for what he was. That they'd open their eyes and realize how he had manipulated them for years. That, for once, they'd defend me. I should have known better. As I stepped inside, there was Alex, sprawled on the couch, scrolling through his phone like nothing had happened. He glanced up, smirking. Hey, man, thought you were dead. I didn't answer. I just tossed my phone onto the coffee table, the fraud alert message still glowing on the screen. Alex's smirk twitched. Oh, he said. Yeah, I replied, my voice cold. That? He stretched lazily. Relax. I was just checking something. I took a slow step closer. You were trying to steal from me. He scoffed. Come on, Mike, don't be so dramatic. It's not like you ever said you wouldn't keep helping out. You just walked away, expecting us to figure things out. What did you think was going to happen? I stared at him. The arrogance, the entitlement, the way he acted like he was the victim. Before I could respond, my mother stormed into the room. There you are, she snapped, her face red. Do you have any idea what you've done? I turned toward her, but she was already on a tirade. Your father's blood pressure has been through the roof. I had to cancel my hair appointment because I was so stressed. And Alex, she gestured at him with dramatic flair, has been trying to keep everything together while you've been off sulking. I blinked. Trying to keep everything together? I repeated, my voice dangerously quiet. By hacking into my bank account? She waved a hand dismissively. Oh, don't be ridiculous. Alex was just trying to see if you were still part of this family. I stared at her, and suddenly, I understood. They knew. They knew what Alex had done. And they didn't care. I looked between them, trying to make sense of it. How? How could they not see through him? How could they justify this? Then it hit me. They weren't blind. They chose to believe Alex over me. No matter what I did, no matter how much I sacrificed, no matter how much I gave, Alex could do no wrong. And me? I was just a resource, a bank account, a burden. Something inside me snapped. I turned toward the door. Where do you think you're going? My mother demanded. I didn't look back. You don't get to just walk away, she yelled. We're your family. I stopped, and in the calmest voice I had ever used, I said, no, you were my obligation, and I just canceled it. Silence. For the first time, even Alex had nothing to say. I stepped outside, letting the cold night air hit my face. For years, I had let them control me, let them guilt me into believing I owed them something. But now, I was done. And no matter what they tried next, because I knew they would try something, I wasn't coming back. I had cut them off. I had moved on. And for the first time in my life, I was truly free. I had made it clear that I was done, but they weren't. The calls turned to threats. For the first few days, the barrage of messages didn't stop. Mom, Michael, this is not how a son behaves. We need to talk. Dad, come home now. Enough of this nonsense. Alex, dude, you're being ridiculous. Just come over and let's fix this. I ignored every single one. Then the tone shifted. Mom, do you really want to abandon your family after everything we did for you? Dad, you think you're so independent? Let's see how long that lasts when you have no one left. Alex, if you keep acting like this, don't expect us to be there when you come crawling back. Crawling back. They still didn't get it. They thought this was just a tantrum, that I'd get lonely and come running, wallet in hand. But I wasn't coming back, and that's when things escalated. Strange encounters started happening. One evening, as I walked to my truck after work, I spotted an unfamiliar car across the street. It was there again the next day, and the next. Different parking spots, but always watching. I told myself it was paranoia until one night. I left my apartment late to grab food. I saw a man near the corner of the building, pretending to check his phone. When I passed, I caught his reflection in a window. He wasn't pretending. He was watching me. I turned around. Hey. He startled, then quickly walked away, disappearing down the street. That's when I knew I wasn't imagining things. Someone was following me. The next morning, I checked my mother's messages. Mom, we just want to know you're okay. If you won't talk to us, we'll find another way. They had hired a private investigator to track me. I had left. But instead of respecting my decision, they were treating me like a criminal. For the first time in this whole mess, I felt something new, fear. Not anger, fear, because this wasn't just about money anymore, it was about control, and I had no idea how far they'd go to get it back. I needed to end this. So that evening, I did something I knew would force their hand. I sent a message to the family group chat. Michael, I know you hired someone to follow me. Stop now or I'll go to the police. Less than a minute later, my phone rang. Mom, I picked up. How dare you threaten us? She hissed. We're just worried about you. You left without a word and now you're accusing us of spying on you? I clenched my jaw. Because that's exactly what you're doing. We just want to be sure you're safe, she snapped. But I see now you don't care about this family at all. I forced a laugh. That's funny, because I cared for this family every single day until I finally realized something. Realized what? She demanded. That you don't actually love me, I said, my voice steady. You just love what I can do for you. Silence. Then her voice dropped to an icy whisper. You think you're so smart, so independent. Who's going to cook for you? Who's going to wash your clothes? Who's going to clean up after you when you realize you can't do anything for yourself? I froze, not because she was right, but because I finally understood. She had never let me take care of myself. She had controlled every part of my life, and now that I was gone, she couldn't bear the idea of me surviving without her. You'll regret this. Michael, she said, dripping with certainty. You can pretend all you want, but you will come crawling back. And when you do, don't expect us to welcome you with open arms. And she hung up. That was the moment I knew they wouldn't stop until they had me back under their thumb. If I didn't take drastic action, they'd never leave me alone. I spent the next morning at the bank, changing every financial detail. New accounts, new cards, new passwords. Then I called a lawyer. I need to make sure my family has no access to me, my finances, or anything I own, I told him. Understood, he replied. I'll draft a legal notice immediately. If they attempt to access anything of yours again, we'll take action. Next, I filed a harassment report with the police. Because I wasn't hiding anymore, I wasn't running, I was fighting back. And I wasn't going to lose. For a few days, everything was quiet, too quiet. The calls stopped. The texts stopped. Even the strange car was gone. Maybe, just maybe, they'd given up. But then, one evening, I came home to a gut-wrenching realization. My apartment door was slightly open. I was sure I had locked it that morning. I stepped inside, tense, and that's when I saw them, the invasion. Sitting on my couch like they belonged there were my mother, father, and Alex. My mother was flipping through my mail. My father was inspecting the apartment with a disapproving shake of his head. Alex was stretched out comfortably, like he had every right to be there. Finally, my mother sighed, tossing an envelope onto the coffee table. Do you know how long we had to wait? I could barely breathe. You broke into my apartment, I asked, my voice low, sharp with menace. My father scoffed, dismissing my words with a wave. Broken? Don't be ridiculous. Your mother still has a spare key from when she helped you move in. Honestly, Michael, you should be thanking us. This place is a disaster. Look at it. He gestured around the room, dirty dishes, clothes piled on the chairs. Is this really how you want to live? I couldn't even process his words. My mother smiled, as if this invasion was perfectly normal. I knew you'd need us, she said, the sweetness in her tone a stark contrast to the tension in the air. You're not ready to live on your own. You think you can cut us out and suddenly be independent? Who's going to take care of you? I inhaled deeply, forcing myself to stay calm. You need to leave. Alex chuckled, clearly enjoying the moment. Relax, man, we're just here to talk. I turned toward him, and something in my eyes must have unsettled him, because his smile faded. I'm calling the police, I said, my voice steady. My mother's eyes widened in disbelief. Michael, don't be dramatic. I pulled out my phone. My father stood abruptly, his patience snapping. Enough of this nonsense, he said, voice hard. You've had your little rebellion. Now it's time to come home. I stared at him, unblinking. Home. You've had your fun, he continued, tone like steel. Now it's time to grow up. You're coming back with us, and this ends now. I almost walked away. They really thought they could force me back. I held up my phone, my thumb hovering over the screen. You have 10 seconds to leave, then I'm calling the cops. Silence. Then my mother's face twisted with fury. You're going to call the police on your own family? She hissed, her voice thick with venom. You stopped being my family the moment you broke into my home, I said, each word cold and deliberate. Her hands shook with rage as she stood up. After everything we've done for you, you ungrateful, selfish child. Done for me? I let out a bitter laugh. You raised me to serve your needs. You used me as a tool, a bank, a fixer. You never saw me as a person. Her face turned red, eyes blazing. We sacrificed for you, she snapped. We gave you a home, a family. You gave me a cage, I said flatly. She took a step forward, her voice like a whip. And what happens when you fail, Michael? Because you will. You don't know how to live without us. One day, you'll come crawling back, begging for help. And when that day comes, I hit dial. The moment she heard the ringing, her face drained of color. You're really doing this? Alex muttered, standing up, his nervous energy suddenly palpable. My father clenched his jaw, the muscles in his face taut. Enough, he muttered, grabbing my mother's arm. Let's go. But she wasn't finished. You think you've won? She spat, venom dripping from her words. You think you can just erase us from your life? I met her gaze, unflinching. Watch me. And with that, they left. The aftermath was quiet. The police arrived about 20 minutes later. I told them everything, the stalking, the break-in, the threats. They took my statement, checked my locks, and advised me to stay vigilant. Do you want to press charges? The officer asked. I hesitated, a mix of anger and exhaustion washing over me. Part of me wanted to, but another part just wanted them to stay away for good. For now, just a restraining order, I said. This wasn't about getting back at them, it was about drawing the line. That night, as I locked the door behind me, truly alone for the first time, I felt something I'd never known before, peace. 6 months passed. 6 months since the police, since the new locks, since I changed my number and rebuilt my life. 6 months without a word from my family, and for the first time in years, I could breathe freely. Freedom tastes like coffee. Sitting in my office, sipping my morning cup, I looked over my schedule. My plumbing business was booming, more clients, bigger contracts. I was even considering expanding my team. Respect was finally coming my way. My clients trusted me, and best of all, every dollar I earned was mine. No unexpected bills from my parents. No endless demands, just peace. It almost felt strange, living without that constant weight, almost, because I had never felt lighter. I still heard things about my family. Alex, 4-1, was forced to get a job when his bills piled up. Apparently, it lasted only 2 weeks before he quit, whining that real work wasn't for him. My parents, they had to downsize, their comfortable life slipping away as they struggled to keep up with mortgage payments. Without my financial support, their world was falling apart. They tried borrowing money from relatives, but I wasn't the only one who had caught on to their games. In short, they were sinking, and part of me wanted to feel sorry for them, but I didn't. They had done this to themselves. The final attempt came one Sunday afternoon. My phone buzzed with an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something told me to answer. I pressed the button, and the voice on the other end sent a familiar chill down my spine. Michael, honey, it's your mother. I exhaled slowly, leaning back in my chair. I had known this moment would come eventually. I've been thinking about you, she continued, her voice soft, almost pleading. It's been so long, don't you think it's time to put all this behind us? I let the silence stretch, then she sighed, almost theatrically. Your father and I, we've had a rough time, we just want to see you. Can't we have dinner, as a family? I almost laughed. As a family? The same family that treated me like an ATM? The same family that broke into my home, stalked me, threatened me, and tried to break me down, and now they wanted to talk? I kept my voice calm, detached. I hope you're doing well, Mom. She jumped at the kindness. Oh, sweetheart, I knew you'd come around. But we have nothing to talk about, I said. Silence. Then her voice hardened. Michael, don't be like this. We're your parents. We raised you. We took care of you. I nodded, though she couldn't see it. And I paid you back for that 1,000 times over. That's not the point, she snapped. You're acting like you don't even care about us anymore. I sighed, weary. I don't think you understand, Mom. You didn't lose me 6 months ago. You lost me years ago. More silence. Her voice turned frigid. Fine. But don't expect us to be there when you need us. I smiled, finally free. I haven't needed you for a long time. And with that, I ended the call. I sat there for a moment, staring at the phone, waiting for the guilt, the sadness, the pain to hit, but it didn't, because I finally understood something. Family isn't about blood, it's about respect. And when someone only values you for what you can do for them, they're not family, they're just people who used to know you. I stood up, stretched, and grabbed my keys. I had a life to live, a business to run, and a future that was mine and mine alone. And this time, I wasn't looking back.